Hello, hello, you most beautiful, gracious, wonderful, amazing stars. Thank you for showing up for Stars of the Morning Light. I am Courtney, host of SML. Today we are in Edgar Cayce um, on Reincarnation. This is a very old book from 1969. I will be doing many retells of what is in there and or briefly reading parts of it. Edgar Cayce Life Skill Studies was to bring 100 years ago forward and talk about all sorts of subjects. And today is going to be karma and the theme of self to self. So many of us, when we talk about past lives or we're interested in self lives, we are thinking more so about the soul contract aspect, not so much connecting with the self. So, good to see everyone. Lori's in the chat. Chloe's in the chat. Good to see you, ladies. I do have my voice back, but it is still a little hit and miss. So I'm going to do my best, and I'm grateful for the good mic that I have that can pick up, even if I have to whisper. Uh, a couple announcements before we start diving in, and as lovely people come into this live chat. One thing, everybody. This is for everybody in the Northern Hemisphere and the Southern Hemisphere. Please remember to continue to drink water. I say it every year around this time. I will continue to say it until my dying breath, probably, because it is so fundamentally important. Continue to drink water. So often, when the cold comes, these animal bodies of ours just want to be under the blankets, want to be resting, and we tend to go more towards our hot tea, our hot chocolates, whatever is hot and nice. That's not water. That's not water, everybody. So remember to drink plenty of water still because our bodies still need it, regardless of the temperature outside. We do still need to drink water. So always remember that. Lori just mentioned in the chat here that this has been a long one of me losing my voice. That's going to be kind of my second announcement. Yes, Lori, you are right, my dear. See, even my subscribers and viewers here have witnessed this before. I think this is the longest loss of my voice ever in my life. I am now going into 3.5 weeks or so. I'm not sure if my voice is going to come back as the same voice. I don't know. What I do know, though, and this is probably the bigger announcement, is during this long stretch of silence, which silence is golden. It truly, truly is. And I believe that wholeheartedly. In this very long stretch of silence, much has been revealed and many decisions have been made within my person. Many big decisions that I will then carry forth into 2025. And I'm already starting it briefly here, and you will see more of it in 2025 on this channel. So there is a lot, and we don't have to go into all the ness of what happens in the world outside of me and inside of me. But there is a lot, I have a lot of reasons as to why you may see full videos deleted. It could be full playlists deleted. Um, Also, new videos, new content. I am going back to my original state as to why I wanted to start this channel in the first place and add a bit to the mix. So, Stars of the Morning Light in its entirety has a spiritual resource platform, not just here at the channel here, but all around, is going to be going under great construction and rebuilding and revamping in the first few months of 2025. Here, this channel, and definitely the patrons of Stars of Morning Light are going to be much higher on my priority focus list. So you might see a lot of shifting, changing, new types of videos, all sorts of stuff happening because this period of silence, um, quite transformative. And this weekend we're heading into is quite transformative for all beings. Friday morning is going to be a lot of fun live at 11 a.m. here, December 12th. So, or December 13th, I apologize. Um, so do know that if you see some changes happening, it's because decisions were made. And so I thank you for participating and supporting and hitting that like. And if you are new here, welcome on in. We are a great community here. And I see that Seeker has joined us. Good to see you, my dear. So, Lori, Chloe, Seeker, thank you for listening. Appreciate you. That's what they say in the South, by the way. In the north of the United States, they will say, I appreciate you. In the South, they say, appreciate you. So who knows what will come out of my mouth? Sometimes a Yankee, sometimes I'm a Southerner. I don't know what's happening, but I know that I enjoy all of it. Yes, Chloe, change is good, my dear. Definitely. I agree. So we are in chapter 4, okay, um, of Edgar Cayce on Reincarnation. And I also am, beloveds, I am currently reading a book about the Magi. It's a good book. I'm still kind of in like a lot of history and art about the Magi, but it's going to get much deeper. That I think around the Christmas time, I will be going live a lot with that as a topic. I'm excited. And I also want to remind everybody that I picked up Edgar Cayce's Mysteries of Reincarnation. And this is a lovely partner book to it. Intimates through time. So, more about soul contracts and whatnot as we continue on, most likely, with this reincarnation topic. People really enjoy reincarnation and, well, they like learning about it and probably having their own soul reincarnation readings or, um, and I understand why. But I also understand that there's a lot more, let's say, mechanics to it than we're aware of. And that's going to be one of the ongoing themes that we're talking about tonight. Let me find the page that I wanted to start us at. So we are in chapter 4, physical and emotional karma. Physical and emotional karma. Now, I will be reading parts from this book and retelling a lot of the past life stories of this in this book. And I will put my 2 cents in because I am in full agreement, but I don't just leave us there. There's always hope. And Edgar even is able to speak about that. What I did want to read to you is this little lovely part here where I don't even think this is the Akashic. This is actually Edgar responding to someone. And I wholeheartedly believe this. Do not blame self. Do not blame the companion, like your partner. Do not blame God. She and her husband had reached a plateau where self must meet self. So that is from a story in this chapter about a couple who ended up having a severely disabled child. And so they reached out to Edgar as to, as individuals, did I do something wrong? What happened here? as far as past life. And it takes three to tango in that situation: wife, husband, child. And so, through the life readings that Edgar would give them, they all had kind of a part to play in the relationships of now in this life. Two parents, disabled child. Remember, this was 100 years ago. How to care for that child now, how to rectify all of this now, right? So at least that child and the adults in their next life can come together in different ways. And I do want to point out, Edgar said, do not blame yourself. Do not blame your partner. Do not blame God. You are now at a point that self needs to meet self. And so a lot of when and I wanted to start with this before I go into any stories, before I tell you some of my personal stories. I want to start with this because we often, as humans in the 21st century, we use karma somewhat of it as an excuse. And I love all peoples, but we do. I grew up in a household that did that. I really did. As if nothing was in my own control. Nothing, I had authority over nothing, that I was completely powerless, and that I was just living out all the elements and aspects and scenes, scenarios, relationships based on karma. That was the household I grew up in, teaching me that. And I disagree with that because I do know that the human free will is one of the most amazing, powerful, glorious gifts in the cosmos. And Edgar, in this material over and over again, will state that the law of grace will override the law of karma any day. Well, how do we practice grace then? First, we got to choose it, and we choose it with our own free will. I'm going to accept myself. I'm going to love myself. I'm going to forgive myself. And then I'm going to take the right action steps to produce the life that I want, that I deserve, that I am worthy of. Opposed to, you have no power over this. This is your karma just running. Just you gotta keep running that karma line, and then it'll sort itself out eventually. But Casey states over and over again the law of grace, grace, to give myself grace, to give all of y'all grace. Every single one of you gets grace. All the little ones, all the big ones, all the old, young, in between, two legged, four legged, no legged. Everybody gets grace. Many of the subs here do understand this, subscribers here. What we tend, though, to do in our minds is use karma to justify some stuff. Either stuff we want to deny, stuff we feel we're powerless of and over, things that we've done that we need to take accountability for and help the situation. Either that's to ask for forgiveness and never do the same thing again. Do not repeat, repeat, repeat. As so many people talk about reincarnation as this wash, forget, repeat. Wash, forget, repeat. And so before we get into all these different examples, this is ultimately why I say that I don't believe in karma. Because what it truly is that I believe in the human free will. I believe in the power of grace. I believe that those two things within the energy of choice, because life is choice experiences, that we can override it. That we're not necessarily learning anything. It's we have to choose differently. That's it. Choice and learning are two separate things, right? So I'm throwing that out there, and I see Kim has come in. Max Vision remote viewing class came in. Good to see you, dear. All right, good to see you guys. So, and this is chapter 4 on physical and emotional karma. What I love about this particular book, written in 1969, the writing is stellar compared to maybe later material. It's just stellar writing. And also, the amount of examples that are used in this material, um, well, it supersedes some other materials that came out later, as far as the amount, just the sheer amount. So I'm not going to be sharing every example that is written beautifully in this version. Okay. We would be here forever, folks. So the one of the first examples that he gave was mostly of the physical, right? So Edgar would always say, he used the term sin, okay? And it's because he was a devoted Christian. So see it in whatever way you need to. Negative energy, transgressions towards self and others, sin, however you need to see it, right? Negative instead of positive, however you need to view it. He would use the word sin. And he would always say that oftentimes our physical ailments within this body of form, in this life that we're living, this experience of now, oftentimes is based on past sins that could be from this current life, but most likely the more serious of a case is from a buildup of sins, transgressions, negativity of past lives. Now, this, beautiful beings, is why I do my quantum timeline cleanses. Is because I go into your timeline and I clean all that negative karmic residue, as I refer to it as, that follows your energy. We do something 5 lives ago, pretty bad, pretty big, significant, either knowingly or unknowingly. Well, that energy then can continue on and it can start to build. Some of it can fade away, but usually attaches itself to something new that we do 3 lives later. It can build and build and build. So I give people the service, the opportunity to for me to do a quantum timeline cleanse because I'll go in your timeline, I'll clean all that junk up. Because why we don't need to live with it. We just need to have the energy within to know that we can choose better, that we're worthy to choose better. And it starts with actually feeling because we're feeling based beings. So the only reason I really do these timeline cleanses is to wipe that all clear for folks so you can feel that you have the opportunity, worthiness, and gratitude and grace to start living differently. That's why I do it. I don't make it big. I don't make it this huge thing. And you also get to learn about your past lives while I'm doing it. But it's really for that. To try to make a clean slate much easier for folks. To start living the way that we all should. Kind, generous, loving, compassionate, all the good stuff. So he will always say, and I'm going to read a word here, or I'm going to read a section because they're talking about a man who unfortunately became ill with multiple sclerosis. And I am not here to distinguish disease from one disease to another. We're strictly talking about energy and karma. That's what we're talking about here. But this is what was said about this man through the Akashic record through Cayce. The entity, this man, Paul Durbin, 100 years ago, the entity is at war within itself. So this human is at war within itself, which that disease, which my husband's grandfather had that, and the stories that the family told, oh my goodness. And I've known many people that have had it. What that disease does is it just starts eating away, deteriorating the muscles, the bones, all of it. And this entity is at war with itself. All hate, all malice, all that will make men afraid. Sorry, that will make men afraid must be eliminated from the mind. For as given as old, each soul shall give an account of every idle word spoken. It shall pay every wilt. Yet the entity knows, or should know, that there is an advocate within the Father. So, they're saying because his conscious and subconscious over life and life and life, this karmic negative energy residue that just keeps going of hate, malice, fear, has now combined itself into what is a mental and physical ailment. And most of us know now in today's world, so a lot of this is readings from 100 years ago, understand that negative thoughts, negative trauma, right? All sorts of things can get stuck within the body, negative energy. And this is why we go to alternative healers. This is why we hold on to our crystals. This is why we look into these things because most of us here are understanding energy is energy. They didn't know that back then. So Edgar is trying to explain this that unfortunately, this poor man is suffering today because of multiple lives of being an asshole. Cayce told him what he could do to rectify a lot of this. And he told the people around this man how we can help this situation greatly. The people around him that could kind of handle his diet, handle his care, definitely did that part. And things got better. But when it came to the man and it came to kindness, graciousness, compassion, forgiveness, that man refused. He refused. So unfortunately, that man died a very slow, agonizing death. And I'm sure that man, whenever he came back, something to that extent was happening again. Because all he needed to do was choose to not be a jerk. Another, this is this is a story. This is a story, y'all. And I do have to say, by doing ratings and doing timeline cleanses, man, I have seen some stuff that happens in people's past lives that It's not that I don't wonder or don't know as to how it affects our current life. I will always bring it into the current and what we can do to change that energy. Whenever I give a reading, whenever I do a cleanse, it doesn't matter. I'm more concerned, as the Akashic is also, I am more concerned as to how we live now than ever in the past, right? And Edgar agrees with me on this. This woman, Stella Kirby. So this is Edgar's time. She was a young mother who became a widow. So she had to do something to support the family. She became a nurse then. And she saw an ad. She went for the interview. This house, she went to the house for the interview, right? The house was huge. She's in like a mansion. And the woman who was interviewing her, they hit it off greatly. On spot, Stella, after hearing like, wow, I will be making more money doing this than pretty much anywhere else. The hours are good. Everything seems to be working out great. I cannot be more blessed. She accepts the job because she also gets along with the lady of the house, or the one who, it was the mansion, the one who supervises everything. Well, then after Stella accepts, she is led upstairs to the human that she will be caring for as a nurse. This man, it is described that he was in a bed, but he was also, there's a bed, there's a chamber pot, there's like a little table, and then there's iron bars around him, basically keeping him in a cage. In a very big room, he's in a cage. They said his eyes were black. He smells. He's repulsive. He is a bit mad. You know, vocally, physically. Uh, and Stella's standing there, and she's told, "This is who you will care for." They open the cage, and Stella walks in to introduce herself. The man is quiet at that time, but she goes to introduce herself, and she touches him, just gently touches him to, as a nurse probably would, to try to calm someone or just introduce via touch and feeling. Poor Stella, the moment she touched him, she was repulsed. Everything in her being was disgusted, repulsed, and she damn near ran out of the cage and out of the house. But she had enough composure to walk away steadily, close the cage. But that night, she's at home. What does she do? This is the best money that she could have to support her family after becoming a widow. And she's not even truly understanding why she was so disgusted. Yes, did he smell vile? Did he look crazy? Yes, all of the above. But to get that kind of intense, immediate reaction within just by simply touching his shoulder. So Stella eventually reached out to Edgar Cayce because she didn't know what to do. And Cayce then did a life reading for her in regards to this. And what I want to point out is when people would have to write, this is usually in written correspondence 100 years ago, right? Now we do it over Zoom, a phone call, what have you. So people would write a letter to Edgar and they would have a list of questions. They would probably give a synopsis, brief explanation as to what's going on in life. And then they would have a few questions. Then whoever is with Edgar asking the questions. Well, then they would have somebody recording the answers, and that would be sent to via mail back to the person. So all of this takes quite a while, right? Stella sends a letter. She did not quit her job, but every day is agonizing. Every day she is disgusted. When she has to bathe him, like a nurse bath, sponge bath, she's almost vomiting. She is in that much disgust. By the time the letter got back to her with the answers from all of her questions, fascinating. Fascinating. Let's look into it. I see that Jackie J came in. Good to see you, my dear. Happy Wednesday. Let's get into it, folks. Whew, this is a doozy, and this is how this stuff works. This is what the reading told her. Twice before, the paths of Stella and her patient had crossed. So they intertwined somewhere before. They came together somewhere before. In Egypt, he had been her son. The revulsion she felt for him stemmed from a life in the Middle East when he had been a wealthy philanthropist of high standing, greatly honored for his generosity. Privately, however, he retained a kind of arrogance, and young women who were obligated to participate in his abnormal sexual practices. She had been one of the unfortunate women involved. So, one time when these paths crossed, the Stella of today with this patient who is locked in a cage, who is revolting to her. One life he was her son. Another life, the outside world sees him as this generous, wealthy, gracious man. Inside that home, horrible abuse is happening. And she happened to be one of the women in the mix of that. So it is stated that the moment she touched him, all those memories of the abuse came back and she could feel it. So I want to point this out. They did not say that she was conscious of those memories. Please take that in. This happens all the time with us humans, and we walk around unaware of it. She touches her patient of today who's locked in a cage. Immediately disgusted. It is reported via a reading from the Akashic that the moment she touched him, all of the memories of being in that household abused by this man came flooding, came filling her up, came flooding back, but all she could do was feel it. Because of the forgetfulness, the fog of 3D. Because we are not wired in the density of 3D to when memories come back like that, understand it, see the images, know what had happened. Some people call it the cleanse, the wipe that happens with reincarnation. I call it 3D density and the forgetfulness, the fog. And that until we obtain a bit of higher consciousness through the law of grace, by the way, we are more open to understanding when something happens like that. But most of us will walk around and get a sense. Ooh, what's up with that guy? What's up with her? What's up with this? Or we will immediately get a feeling because we are feeling beings. That's why your frontal lobe and all of its decision making and its dopamines and serotonin and all the great stuff of the frontal lobe, where science wants to say that your consciousness is, that was always referred to as the feeling of the meaning of things. We will always feel. This is why Christ, that Edgar would follow, right? The master, the Christos, talked more about the human feeling experiences than anything else, because we will feel and then act accordingly or not. So she felt it. Two different lives with this person. One, he was her son. Go forward some, he's her abuser. And now she's with him again, and it is her job to care for him. How can she, though? When she feels. This is what Edgar told her. Yet Edgar insisted, and this is in parentheses, as he did in every similar case. So many cases. Oh, I wish I could actually like have coffee or something with Edgar so I could be like, dude, I get it. We spend most of the time repeating ourselves, and it's okay. It's okay. Because a lot of quote unquote life lessons you already know. You just need to be reminded that love is what you choose. Yet Cayce insisted, as he did in every similar case, that the crippled mind was capable of responding to love. That Stella must, in short, learn to love him if she ever hope to surmount her own karmic barriers. To leave the house would be no solution. The bond between them would simply continue, unresolved, into their future lives. Hmm. Cayce tells this woman, this story goes on between the two of you. You have to choose love. And that crippled mind of his, those barriers within you, they can be cured from love. And so she practiced that. She practiced that because she knew this relationship did not start in the Middle East when she was being abused. It started in Egypt when she was actually the adult. She was the mother. Something had to have happened on her end to start this cause and effect, right? To start this. I'm going to read this little section. I agree, Miss Chloe. I agree. The readings were too compassionate to refer to the relationship between the two when she had been his mother in Egypt. But since there is no effect without a cause, there's first a cause, there's first a something, there's first a thought, an action, there's first. And then there's a whole lot of effects. And that is the rotation that is essentially karma that you can step out of when we choose love. and create a new cause. And when that cause is love, oh, oh, it's beautiful, it's wonderful, changes everything. But since there is no effect without cause, she would hardly have been subjected to his obscene uh, fantasies in the East unless already owed him a debt. One can assume that she had failed her son in Egypt, either by neglect or rejection, at the point of their mutual destiny where her help could have prevented him from plunging into self annihilating paths. She knew. She started it. She knew. So she listened to Edgar and was like, wow, love is the only thing that's going to rectify this then. I need to actually love this human being that's being kept in a cage because no one knows how to treat him, which is probably from the rejection I did way long before. I now am going to love him as if he were my son. I'm going to bathe him. I'm going to feed him. I'm going to take care of this being. And eventually, over time, when Stella continuously showed up with the law of graciousness and the law of love, that man started to change, started to change, started to change, started to change. Love had changed it for both of them. It's a beautiful story. It's a beautiful acknowledgement. I know this beautiful being who's living now. And she's talked about this very openly on her podcast, We're All Psychic. You can look it up, Misty and Lisa. I'm speaking about Misty right now. Beautiful being, We're All Psychic podcast. Misty, this was about 2 years ago, came to understand in her family line was self-ending situations. Every generation, there was a self-ending. And she came to find out because there was some kind of entity producing those self endings. Well, she, through other means, learned how to break that, get rid of that curse, remove that entity from the family line. She learned how to do that. After she had learned how to do that, I think I was doing a reading for her or a timeline cleanse. I don't remember. And I'm watching something that I didn't even know about her experience of ending this recently for the sake of the family because it was multiple generations that this occurrence kept happening. And I'm witnessing something horribly tragic, a deal being made long, long ago that she made with an entity in order to save her family. She gave up to this entity the right for it to take a member each generation. And that's what played out. So, as I'm telling her this, hey lady, you did something long ago. I got to I'm cleaning this up. I'm making you aware of it. This was not good. It was done out of fear and heartache. This is not good. Well, I get done with my thing, and she starts telling me, oh my goodness, Courtney, every psychic, every reading, every guide, everything was telling me I had to fix this problem within our family. She said, I had no idea why it had to be me. I have a huge family. And she said, so I did. It took me months of receiving all the details and actually then figuring out how to create a ceremony and ritual to end this, to break this curse. She said, but I still had no idea why it had to be me. But every psychic just kept saying it had to be her. It's because she's the one who started it. I was able to give her that information. She started it. So many times we do causes. We create a cause that then rolls out effects. And then when we have lives over and over and over again, we have no idea why it's here. We have no idea what's going on. Same with Stella. She knew that she needed to take care of this patient. She knew she needed the money to help her family. She knew that it was going to take a great deal of fortitude, willingness, and compassion on her part to succeed here. Why was she able to do it? Because by the time it went from ancient Egypt as him as her son, and the life in between of horrible happenings, and then it finally comes back to Stella, she had developed throughout all of her lives the ability to choose love. And with the awareness that this is on her. This is on her. This is her power. This is her choice. This is her doing. So this is all the reasons, and I'm sure it will get even more detailed as we get into reincarnation with Edgar Cayce, as to why I say I don't believe we're learning lessons. It is natural for us to know what love is and what is hate, or what love is and what is fear. Now, all of the little characteristics to it, and the feelings and the actions and all of that, the scenes that roll out in the stories of our lives, that's not what I'm talking about. That is still choice experience. That is what life is. What I'm talking about is we know what love is. We do. Even if we feel like we haven't felt it ever. We do. And you know how we know? It's because when we do finally feel it, we know what that is. We know exactly what that is. So we do have accountability in the choices we make. Going back to the very beginning of this video, I originally said I grew up in a household that used the term karma to justify not having any power in their own decisions, or the lack thereof making decisions. That everything was willy-nilly, fate, destiny, you have no power. But yet you are the cause. You were created as the cause. And you, as a creator, continue to create cause. And then all the effects is all the little details, all the little minutia. So if we just continuously choose love as the cause, regardless, we sort it all out. Good to see everyone here tonight. And today, good day. Whenever you're catching this, welcome to Stars of the Morning Light. We talk about all sorts of different subjects, all sorts of different readings here. I want to talk to you guys quick about art. So we're talking about the human experience here, and us beautifuls, no matter who you are, what you're into, how you create, you are creating. Could be from science, could be art, it could be life. Thank you, creators of life. It could be all sorts of different forms of creation, education, all sorts. I'm going to do a shout out right now of a beautiful creator, a Colombian creator based out of Vienna. She is a patron of the Stars of the Morning Light, and because the new year is upon us, one of her biggest things that you could purchase is one of her calendars. Now, what you guys might not know is this calendar of hers from last year, you have actually been looking at all year. I have had it on this image of June of 2024 calendar all year, right behind me where that wreath is right now. Beautiful Daniela is an amazing watercolor artist. When you flip through this, and this is last year's calendar, this year's calendar is, I love the theme. She has taken animals and like six different animals that are all living together. And so she's created all these different fun scenes within the different animals, right? It's so much fun and it is a beautiful gift, unique gift, all sorts of different art. So I'm showing you this from last year. Okay. We are reaching into 2025. Her 2025 calendar is for sale right now. Everything you need to contact Daniela is in the description below. And I don't know about you guys. Look at that. Look at that. That is beautiful. She has the constellations and whatnot within the fox, within the mushrooms. Beautiful beings. I don't know if you know this. Every art form tends to have a particular genre of it that is held, let's say, a little bit more higher, a little bit of higher esteem than some others. For instance, like myself, I studied writing, like fiction writing, creative writing. And it is very well known within the writing community that to write fiction, prose, scene by scene, right? To give all the details of what the environment looks like, to the action, to the inner dialogue, all of it. To write a piece of fictional work is actually way easier than to write a good play, stage play. So, in the writing world, if y'all didn't know this, playwrights, good playwrights, like Tennessee Williams, they are held in an esteem because it is very difficult to convey everything that a writer can do in words on the page in dialogue only. Very difficult. And that for me is what I feel when I'm looking at her artwork. Watercolor to me is in that same regard. There's tons of different medias that artists use. For me personally, watercolor, I don't know how she can do things so gracefully, so delicately, and it come out so beautifully. She has cards for sale, calendars for sale, all sorts of stuff for sale. The reason I'm bringing this up now, folks, is because it's Daniela's prime time. Through December and January is when she sells out most of her product. So if you are considering appreciating a fellow artist out there, an artist, period, you know personally, go to the description, click on her website, click on her Instagram, click on email her. Get connected with her because she has an array of different artwork. And right now, you don't want to lose out. You really don't. I mean, if I got this calendar, well, her 2025 calendar, I should say, as a gift from somebody because of the detail, because of the excellence, because of how beautiful it is, I would actually feel very special because it's unique. It's that love gift that says, hey, I think you would appreciate this. I'm thinking about you instead of selfish, right? Instead of poor Paul Durham, who ended up suffering because he wouldn't let go of being selfish and unforgiving. So check out the links in the description, folks. She's an amazing artist. Thank you for listening. Oh my goodness, let me tell you about another story. And then I'm actually going to tell you about some personal stories so I can even, in my own life, verify what I'm describing to you all. So another great, and I will never leave you also in, oh no, it's peril, it's karma. We can't fix this. Yes, you can. So the ending here is going to be beautiful and miraculous. Love it. Love it. Another reading that is in chapter 4 here is between two women, Irene and Kitty. So think back at the turn of the century. Irene was a very popular name. Kitty was also a popular nickname. And there's Irene and there's Kitty. Kitty is her sister-in-law. Irene, something has gone wrong with her leg. Some kind of big infection, um, what have you, that it's becoming paralyzed. And so the doctors actually want to amputate it from the thigh down, so to save Katie or Irene, pardon me, Irene. Well, before they're about to do that, they reach out to Edgar. Once again, here's a synopsis and a letter of what's going on. We're reaching out to you before this leg is amputated. We have a list of questions. Edgar went back into Irene's life, not Katie's just yet. He went back into Irene's life, or Kitty's, pardon me, Kitty's, and saw how this affliction would happen from her abuse of others and her jealousy. It was mostly jealousy. And what's fascinating is then he looked at Kitty's life. How did this woman come to be this one, Irene's sister-in-law? How did these women come together? Who is Kitty? Kitty had a few lives of being a nurse. So therefore, she also had all the skills within her to know how to take care of Irene. All the skills within her is written in this book. I might be able to find it. That they literally talk about that all of your skills from past lives are within you. All of them. So, here we go. What of Kit's own karma? In prehistoric Egypt and again in Arabia, she had gained and lost. In Egypt, she developed the talent of nursing, which enabled her to care for Irene in the present. But she had been vain and jealous of her social position in Arabia and resentful when age caused her to relinquish it. So she also has her own karma because she's looking at it as I'm Irene's sister-in-law. If this leg becomes amputated, I'm probably going to be her primary caretaker. And I'm a young woman who is married and wants to have children. If I'm taking care of anybody, I want to take care of my household. So where's that karma lie? And where do these women intertwine? They intertwine during the time of Nero. Yeah. Think about that, please. I want to pause for a moment. During the insanity of Nero, many of us, we are not going far back enough in our scope, at least our conscious scope of history, to think about, oh, I could have been present during been present during this. I could have been present during that. Of social pressures because of the times, and you could have created huge, horrific causes. Same as how Misty did. And she allows me to share that story, by the way. Same as Misty did. The time that she attached the family energy to a demon to protect the current family was very long ago. Very, very, and I mean, I think that 13th, 14th century, maybe. So Irene and Kitty, both lived and knew each other in the time of Nero. So Irene at the time was kind of one of the women of the house, and Kitty was kind of a maidservant, but they spent a lot of time together. Here's what's interesting. Kitty was actually slowly, quietly converting to Christianity. And as we can remember, Nero persecuted the Christians like no other. He had beasts rip them to shreds in the Colosseums. Kitty was being inspired. She actually heard Paul speak in a cavern in secrecy. So she slowly kind of was sharing this with Irene to slowly kind of inspire Irene as they're getting dressed and doing what women do. Well, Irene actually was kind of she had her ears were open to it at first. But then come to find out, as these are young women, Irene was smitten with some young man. She had her eyes set. That one. That's the one I want. Well, she didn't know that he was very attracted to Kitty. And Kitty kind of started talking to him. And the moment Irene found that out, even though she was not against this whole Christianity thing, because Kitty had shared enough with her that's like, whoa, maybe there is something going on there. Even though they had been friends their entire life, out of jealousy and anger and selfishness, Irene, and this is all in her past life, Irene told the officials that Katie was a convert, that she was a Christian. And then sat there smuggingly, laughingly in in the seats of the Colosseum, watching not so much Kitty getting ripped apart, but watching the face of the man that she was after being torn to shreds internally, having to witness that. That man never recovered from witnessing who he loved being teared apart. So Irene never won him over because his mind was gone. So she died alone and she had her friend killed. Jealousy, selfishness. Now, that's Nero. These ladies, Kitty, the lives that came after, were not as devastating as they were for Irene. Irene horribly chose to do the wrong thing knowing that Kitty would die. Her lives continuously did not go well. And now, at the turn of the century, they're sending a letter to Edgar Cayce because they're sister-in-laws. And Irene has an ailment that might have her lose her entire leg. And then Kitty would be the one that probably would have to take care of her. What do we do? These ladies received this information, which bold for them to read and accept what was delivered. But Casey did not leave him there. He left it with this has to be resolved. And you're resolving it now through love, through compassion, through care and forgiveness and the law of grace. Forgiveness on all ends, self to self. People come to a time As we started this video, self must meet self. And in the previous chapters in this book that have already been discussed, when, if, imagine if humans did have the recollection of all that they had ever done in all of their lives, if you had that recognition right now, how do you think you would be living? Do you think you would have the strength and the willingness to forgive yourself for all of the horrific things that humans can do to one another? And that you, in your conscious state of now, witness and know that you were that person. It would be when they talk about pills to swallow, folks, that is a massively huge pill. So Edgar often would talk about there's reasons why we don't remember. A, because the celestial beings of the divine, the Akashic, God, is not so much looking at the past, they're looking at what are you doing right now? How are you loving? How are you caring? How are you loving yourself and forgiving yourself and taking care of others? How are you doing that? I'm going to give some self examples here. And yes, this video is going a little bit over. But I haven't been here in a while, everybody. It's so good to be with you all here. Oh, Chloe said I have an Aunt Irene. My middle name is Irene. And Seeker's mom's name was Irene. Yes, it's an older name and it's a beautiful name. Um, I'm going to share a little bit about Brad and I. So I have this husband. His name is Brad. Many of you know this. We have we actually started dating December of '08. So we've been together for quite a while. I knew when I met Brad, whoa, like that touch, that first hug, that first handshake. It was actually, I was reaching over a restaurant table because there was a group of us together and I touched his hand. That feeling, whoa, what is that? But the feeling was so a mix of love. I knew it was love. Didn't know what to do with it at the time, but I knew it was a feeling of love. Hence, like when Stella touched the man in the cage, and all of a sudden she was disgusted. When I touched my husband's hand for the first time, whoa, intense love. But not so much, marital love, let's say, but just love. So I walked away that night going, whoa, okay, I don't know that guy, but clearly something's up, right? Well, then you keep talking. You need to investigate. Who is this person that clearly there's love? Well, as we started dating, well, over the course of the years, I started investigating. And yes, Brad and I have been together numerous times. And unfortunately, however our paths met and crossed, usually led to our death, and death at a young age. So over the years, at some point, as I was gaining the awareness of different times Brad and I have connected, that wow, for us coming together usually means we're gonna die. And what was really scary is in we started dating December '08. Brad had a massive rolled his car accident, right? He rolled it into a pole, massive accident. He walked away alive. We still don't know how in early February of '09. So not even 2 months later, a little bit 2 months later. So oftentimes when my husband and I come together, we then contribute to each other dying. So it became this kind of joke in the house of like, well, damn, if we just live, I think we've beat it. If we just live and survive, we probably have broken whatever weird karma energy is attached to us continuously, unconsciously or consciously killing one another. Could you imagine that? You're married to a man that you know might be the death of you. As many of us might laugh at that right now, right? Because that's what we say about our partners. Oh man, you're going to be the death of me. Now think that you have the awareness of, yeah, because that's the scenario that just keeps happening. One of them, I will tell you some of the past lives, and this is I'm sharing this information because it coincides with what we're learning, so you can know that I'm not just reading material here. I do know what I'm talking about. Um, I'll go back to the one that's longest, kind of furthest away. And we've done this, like I said, numerous times, but I'll only give a few examples. Um, think like 13th, 14th century France. This was definitely France. Um, in that life, I had been discarded by my mother. She did not want to deal with me at a very young age. I mean, I was discarded at like 5 or 6 years old, cast out of the city kind of boundaries. What happened though is there were some women living in the forest who took me in as a child. Those two women in that life were also my mother of this life and an aunt. Okay? We all come back together to sort things out, to choose love. Well, through the years, yeah, there was chatter in the town that, the women in the forest are probably witches, that sort of thing. They did not do anything about it though. So I grew up learning all this stuff, live off the land from my mother and her sister in this present life and that life. When those two older ladies passed away though, I was a young maiden. I was beautiful. Kind of looked a little bit like I do now, but more, I don't know, hungry looking. Um because of that time period. Brad was a soldier. And one day he's marching through with a few others, marching through, and we see each other. Almost instant, whoa, who's that? Well, then Brad took it upon himself to investigate, as I took it upon myself to investigate who he was in this life. So, in that life, I will tell you, things got very hot and heavy. We were young, hot and heavy. That is definitely not allowed in 13th, 14th century France. Things got very hot and heavy, like almost uncontrollable. And that's what the townspeople decided to use when they found out that I was corrupting a soldier. I am a witch then, right? And one woman in particular started that persecution rollout, that cause and effect. I was thrown in jail. I was in there for a long time. And then I was finally executed. Brad also ended up being executed later on because he was unwilling to be silent about it. So, because of us being hot and heavy and uncontrollable attraction, we both get killed. Later on, we're both male. And this is during the, let's say, this Trail of Tears. Um, we were both in this area, in the Chattanooga, Tennessee, North Georgia area. He is a white man. I am a native. There's a fight. And it is the last of the 4-day war, right? It was the 4-day war. What is interesting, though, is that we had actually seen each other at I don't even know what you would call that because it wasn't really a treaty signing. The white people got together with some of the natives and they were trying to hash things out. And this was before the 4-day war, or 4-day battle, I should say. It was a battle, 4-day battle here. Um, Both Brad and I were present at those discussions before the 4-day battle happened. And what's interesting is, as a viewer in a different angle, as I get this, these things in memory, in Akashic awareness, I'm kind of watching it like, from a different angle, like it's a TV, like I'm watching a movie maybe. It is very clear that myself as an indigenous male and Brad as a white man, we saw each other at this meeting. There was even a look across the room at one another, probably because somehow we felt, because we are feeling beings, like, do I know that guy? How do I know that guy? I feel like I can kind of communicate with him across the room. And witnessing this, I can say there was this kind of nonverbal communication of, this ain't going to be good. This is not right. The white man that was Brad and the native of me, both saying none of this is right. None of this is right, without even being verbal. And unfortunately, on the battlefield, it was that white man of my husband, Brad, back then, who stabbed me in the gut, and now I'm dead. So once again, two young beings, two lovely, beautiful lives ended. And who knows? Is that because we didn't say anything? Or is it because Brad said something before? Is it because I didn't know how to handle the situation before, when things were not right in the persecution of me and him? And now we're back together on two opposing sides going, this ain't right. But what do you do because of the time frame and who we are living as? Once again, we both die at the hands of one another in a roundabout, energetic way. Fast forward to Texas. I'm a madam in Texas. I owned a whorehouse. That that life is very connected to this life. I owned a whorehouse. And I was not the nicest madam. I I was not. This is why I say sometimes when we get all these memories and we do know what our karma truly can be, it could be, as we all know, fight, flight, freeze, and now fawn. The majority of humans would not know what to do with it. So I got to realize and find out I was a really horrible madam, really horrible, in Texas, during which I had a son. That was Brad. So now he's my son. So, first life, hardcore lovers. Ooh, shit was steamy, folks. Next time, opposing sides that don't even agree with the sides. Two, he's my son. Growing up in a whorehouse, by the way. I was more, and it was, I will tell you, there was a woman that I had that it was her job to watch my son. And one fine day, when I was more preoccupied with a very large purchase, it was a great deal. I was very into money at that time. Um, it was a great deal at buying, I mean, trunks full of guns. I can't express to you how much we were packing my cellar full of guns, because the deal of how much money I could make off of selling them guns was going to bring in for me, I was so much more focused on that than paying attention to what was going on with my kid. And unfortunately, my kid, who is now my husband, he was killed by a train. I don't even know all the circumstances. He was, though, killed by a train. I beat that woman so hard that was supposed to be watching my kid because that was who I was in that life. That in this life, I had a whole lot to work through and choose love and compassion and grace for other human beings and myself. I then left those women to figure it out for themselves and moved up to Kansas City and died angry, alone, full of hatred and resentment, and tuberculosis. So there you go, folks. We connect somewhere. Soul contracts. How do we resolve them if we know them or not? So it is kind of a running joke in this house like, hey, Brad, we just got to stay alive. We're doing pretty damn good. you know, if we know it or not, the answer is love. The answer is to look at those in our life that it's complicated, it's not complicated. We look at them through the law of grace that holds the compassion that will clear up any karmic residue that causes the difficulties of now. I wanted to share that with you all because that's how I'm doing it. Do not think that I did not run into the women from that life again in this life. Do not think that there was a very strong time period in this life of mine, over 20 years ago, that I was way more focused on money than respecting any life involved. There was, from about, well, I was young and I was there and I was hardcore present for at least 3 years where I did not respect life at all. It was all about money and getting what I wanted. And then on the back end of that, after I got sober, I was there to help so many women that in many lives I abused. We can change the narrative. We can change the karmic residue, negative energy at any time. We do have to have that self accountability, that self awareness that we have power of choice, that we can go, I don't care what you say, karma. I'm going to love this person. I'm going to show this person I love them. I'm going to be there for them. I'm going to listen. I'm not going to judge them. I'm not going to judge myself from shit I did lives ago. I'm going to love every day, every day. And that's how you do it. In chapter 4, there's a beautiful story about Edgar Cayce came across a 17-year-old girl who wrote him a letter, mostly based on what kind of vocation, occupation, career should I obtain. And during his reading, a whole bunch of her past life stuff came up because it was tied into the skills and talents she has of now. I can love my husband very intensely, in gratitude, in respect, because he was my child once. Because we both had to battle things that had nothing to do with us. Because we loved each other very intensely once, we can do it again. This young 17-year-old, when she sent this letter asking about vocation, Edgar kept kind of referencing her past lives because the Akashic was thrilled with this entity, because in numerous lives, she kept improving little by little, by choosing grace. She kept improving by choosing faith, by choosing the power of faith and hope, of grace, by love. She kept obtaining all these different social skills, great skills of definitely diplomacy, nurturing, definitely keeping a lovely home in order, which 100 years ago was a big deal. How to be that feminine energy within a confined space was a big deal. She had learned and obtained so many beautiful qualities that the Akashic just kept bragging on her, praising her that, hey, she's going to do great. And if she wants to do a bit better, then look into this. If she wants to do a bit better, look into that. And beautiful beings, it was suggested that maybe in this life she participate with, like the Red Cross, because her nurture, her understanding, her actual resourcefulness in difficult situations, because one of her lives, she was a frontier woman that her husband was absent quite often. She had to take care of that homestead, take care of the children, put everything together. And also, she chose to develop relationships with the local natives, knowing that relationship can come before danger and hatred. She was that smart. All of those skills are still with her in this current life of 100 years ago talking to Cayce. Diplomacy, good communication, knowing how to get that hard work done in dangerous situations, which she was doing on that homestead often in various different ways. It could have been an animal attack, it could have been a native attack, it could have been just men being men. She was handling it. Could have been any accident. She learned how to do all of these beautiful things. And then, even more so in other lives, the compassion, the grace, the faith, the hope, all of this made her able to then, she worked with the Red Cross for a very long time. And please notice, if she is a 17-year-old talking to Edgar, she then was participating in World War II. She was with them, handling what was ever going on with those men. She then later, as she retired from the Red Cross, was the head woman of a female dormitory, teaching these lovely ladies that you can be a strong, powerful, successful, non-fearful feminine while also making a lovely home, while also catering to the feminine within. This young girl at 17 was asking things about career and where should I live and what should I do. Here we find an entity who may be said to combine all that is beautiful, gracious, and lovely, and all the makeshift making that one might imagine. So she was also a clever girl. Suffering has cleansed the mind much. It has set it towards helping others. This is marvelous, For it is well for most individuals even to be in the presence of this entity, of this young girl. Suffering has cleansed the mind much. So in other times, other lives, this beautiful girl in a masculine body of form or a feminine body of form suffered enough that based out of that suffering was forced, most likely, into choosing love, hope, faith. We all know people that will talk about this. A lot of people in recovery will say it's the bottom. You hit your bottom. You hit your breaking point. You hit the point of no return, whatever it may be. All of us in this life and in other lives, we go through suffering. It's not karma to teach you a lesson. Why? Because suffering is suffering. We already know what it feels like. We've done it many times. We know what that lesson, quote unquote, which I don't think is the appropriate word. That's why I'm kind of facetious when I say that, right? Kind of in my tone, because I think that needs to be eliminated from the category of when we're talking about karma. All is energy. So it's energy in repeat or negative energy residue that is following you. And then we suffer. We suffer internally, externally, mentally, emotionally. Then we suffer. And this is why Buddha talked about the suffering so much. This is why karma comes out of Buddhism, because it's suffering. And in the suffering is the question as to why. Why? The why is to create a new cause. The why is there because we haven't chose to love completely regardless. We have not chose to love without judgment. We have not chose to love without fear. Any master across the board, from very ancient times to more current times like the Christ, all psychics that have any fortitude and are legitimate and talking with beings that are of the divine, not beings of the astral, as we are all of the divine, but not beings that have their own interest at heart, but of the divine that cares what happens. All of those psychics that can do that has always been known, especially in, geez, native prophecies, Russian psychics, some American psychics, Edgar Cayce. It has always been stated in a lack of more or less words, right? That when humans learn how to love, that's when all suffering will cease. When humans learn to love, that is when the world changes. When humans learn to love, all karma, it melts away. So once again, self meets self. Regardless as to the why, regardless if you know the soul contract, regardless if you know all the past life stories, self meets self. Self has to look at this life, this current life experience, good, bad, all of it. what we choose, what we don't choose, what we've allowed, what we haven't allowed, what we've loved, what we've feared, what we hate, all of the transgressions we have done against ourself and others when we are not choosing love, we take accountability of that. And then we say, I forgive myself as I know I am forgiven. I forgive myself as I know I am forgiven. And even if you don't trust it, even if you're not positive, say, I know I am forgiven and I forgive myself, because it is your own self forgiveness that is usually the biggest barrier from any, any evolution, any spiritual awakening. I forgive myself and I choose love. I am going to step into the law of grace and step out of the law of karma. I am going to choose love for myself and everyone I come in contact with. The world changes. The world changes. And then I have to tell you folks, you don't learn so many new lessons. Why? Because you've already learned them. When you start walking in love and being in love with all the people, places, and things, life changes so drastically that the suffering of karma and why this was all developed in concept and theory and energetic form will melt away. Definitely. As it did for that 17-year-old girl. She lived a wonderful life of service, of love, because it said the suffering has cleansed the mind much. It has set it towards helping others. This miraculous, for this is miraculous, for it is well for most individuals even to be in the presence of this girl, this young woman. The suffering brought the brink, brought that level that Cayce says is when self has to meet self. You gotta get with self. You gotta have that reckoning with self. You gotta look at all that stuff and not deny it and go, okay, that was me. I forgive myself and I love myself for everything I am aware of and everything I'm not aware of that I have ever done. And I mean it. And I'm going to live as if I do. That suffering cleanses the mind to the point that then we get to have the opportunity of the light to come in and say, hey, it ain't about you. All that karma, all that negative residue, all it does is keep us focused on self. When we're tiptoeing around looking at self. Suffer here, suffer there, suffer here, suffer there, suffer here, suffer there. Instead of taking a real good long look at self, so self can actually become a beautiful light for others. I know most of the listeners here do understand what I mean by that. Truly, I know that you do. Because we all have suffered greatly, and we all are starting to come out on the other side. So we know that when we let go and we embrace the compassion, the love, the forgiveness, miraculous things happen. And that is how we begin new causes and effects. I want to remind everybody again, click on the description and go visit Daniela's website. Check out her calendar. It's actually not that much, folks. Her new calendar for 2025. And I do believe if you contact her via email, because we're outside of Vienna and Europe, So contact her via email, please, to order from her. If you are able to do that, I do believe it might get here before Christmas if you do it this weekend. If not, it will definitely be here before the new year. Because I believe I ordered, or it was in effect around this time last December, and this calendar did come before the new year. So it could be for anybody. One of those last minute gifts of like, oh man, we're celebrating the holiday after the holidays. Okay. Or for yourself, treat yourself, what have you. It's a beautiful work of art. And also, what I've kind of been thinking is I might cut out that artwork because the year is done and put those in little frames because it's so beautiful. Beloveds, thank you for listening. I hope this was inspiring. You're living a choice experience over and over and over again, from the sequencing of one choice to the next choice to the next choice. So consciously continue to choose love, and the world will open up, and we will not suffer. It's glorious. And I see that Lucky came in at the very tail end. Happy to see you, Lucky Stone A88. And Lucky and I will be here Friday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, doing our thing. We don't have a topic yet, but we do have a guest for December 20th, folks. So stay tuned for Lucky Stone A88 and I for Esoteric Tea Friday nights at 8 p.m. and live here Friday morning at 11 a.m. This has been a very long show, folks. Thank you for being with me. I I adore all of you. I hope this helped inspire that we don't have to be trapped by karma. We just gotta love. And I love you all. Have a great day. Until we see each other again. Bye, folks.